This is one fat boy, and here are my NBA game predictions for April 5th. Tonight there is 12 games, and I will be going over the spreads and over-unders for each of them. For the 76ers at the Pacers, I'll go with Indiana plus 12, as the Sixers have been keeping their games fairly close. I do expect the Sixers to still win, as they are fighting for that first seed, at least want to stay in the top 3 seed area. And the Pacers, they're at the end of their season, they're out of the playoffs, but I think they have enough offensive firepower to at least keep the game close within 12 points. That's why I'll be leaning towards over 232, because if Indiana is going to stay within this range, I think they're going to have to score a lot of points, or unless the Sixers, which we have seen the past few weeks where they don't cross 100 points or in the low 100, it could go under. And if you see that, you see the Sixers having a bad game, just take the Pacers winning. But I think overall, as this game should probably go, is Sixers win, but in kind of a closer game and kind of a high-scoring affair. For Cleveland at Orlando, I'll be going with the Magic plus 8.5. So kind of like a similar situation in the last game. So Orlando, they'll probably keep it close. Like Cleveland, they should win. They should want to stay in that 7-8 seed spot currently. So they just have to win one game during the play-ins, or possibly move up to that 6th spot. And then the Magic, they're tailing their season. They are playing at home. They do play better at home. So I think they will keep it close, but I think Cleveland will ultimately win this game. I will lean towards an under, as the Magic's offense, we saw them score I believe it was 88 points their last game. So it's they can be slowed down. Cleveland still has decent defense. Even with their injuries, they still have a decent defense. But even with injuries, you might want to take the over. But I think overall, I would take an under, as Cleveland's offense isn't fantastic. The Magic's offense isn't fantastic. So I think it's easier to bet on them just being bad on offense. So take the under. And then Magic should be able to keep this game close. For the Hawks at the Raptors, we lean towards Toronto minus 4. So both these teams, I think this should be kind of a playoff atmosphere type game. So expect a close game. But I think Toronto should be able to sneak out a win, maybe just pull away towards the end of the 4th quarter. But obviously, I could see Atlanta just keeping it within plus 4. So this is probably a game I wouldn't bet on the spread, or maybe even a winner. But if I had to lean towards one team, I'd lean towards Toronto. I do see a high-scoring affair, so that's all. I'll take an over 226, as Atlanta, they do give a lot of points, but they have just been scoring on everyone. So that's why I take an over. Then Toronto's just pretty consistent in that 110 point range, at least plus or minus 5 from that area. So that's why I'd lean towards an over. For Charlotte at Miami, I'll be going with Charlotte plus 5.5. Charlotte, would at least like to try to get up to that 8th seed, so they don't have to play one. They have something to play for. Miami, they believe they're in the 1st spot in the East, or they're at least up there. And then I know there's just funny things going in the East, especially in that 1st seed area, those top teams. They're just kind of losing games, kind of on purpose. So that's why I just lean towards Charlotte, winning or just keeping it close, as it seems like the 1st seeds don't want to be first, because there's that chance you play Brooklyn. But I wouldn't be too scared of Brooklyn overall. So Miami should win, but just kind of what's been happening, I just lean towards Charlotte. But just kind of the awry of this game and kind of the implications hidden behind, I probably won't bet on the spread, as there's just too many conspiracy theories going on. But betting an over, especially if you're leaning towards the Charlotte for winning this game, take the over of 223.5, as Charlotte should score a lot of points, or unless you really have a lot of faith in Miami's defense, take the under. But I think Charlotte should play well, and when they play well, they score a lot. So Charlotte plus 5.5, over 223.5. For Houston at Brooklyn, so 17.5 point spread. That's pretty big. I think that's probably the biggest one I've seen all season, which I can see Brooklyn covering that. But I think it's reasonable to take Houston, as the Nets defense just kind of been random, and then Houston has been a little more consistent on offense than how consistent Brooklyn's defense has been. So that's why I'll be taking Houston plus 17.5, then an over, as both these teams' defenses aren't great. So I just taken over 244. I wouldn't be surprised if like Durant has another massive game, but pretty much if you think both of them are going to have a good game, Kyrie and Durant, then take Brooklyn minus 17.5. But Brooklyn kind of depends on how well Kyrie plays, because if he's just chucking up a lot of shots and not getting like good efficiency, then the game's going to be close, or like at least within 17.5 points. But if both of them are making their shots at good efficiencies, it's going to be a blowout. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Brooklyn scores 150 of this game. But saying that, it's like the way that Brooklyn's been playing, and there's a reason why they've fallen to the 10th seed. That's why I take Houston plus 17.5. And if Houston's going to cover that, that means they're going to score a lot of points. So over 244. For Portland at the Thunder, be leaning towards OKC minus 4. So OKC's playing with a lot of confidence as of late. They beat the Suns their last game, even though most of the Suns starters weren't playing. And it's just kind of an off game for the Suns. But I think OKC, they have a lot of positives. You have a lot of young players who want to win. They just are on a struggling team. And then Portland, their injury list is just longer than their active players. So I just have to lean towards the Thunder just being more healthy and just kind of winning a few games. So that's why I lean towards OKC minus 4. We'll also be taking over 223.5, as OKC's offense has been better. They've been scoring more points than I think Portland will have a better game on offense. Like, I feel like they just have to get like 104 points, because I think OKC can get that like 115, 120. So Portland just has to be like low mid 100s, like just have like just kind of show off, because they're in that 80, 90 point range. If you think the Thunder's defense is going to hold Portland down that low, then take the under. But I think since these are both young teams, there's going to be a lot of mistakes, a lot of easier baskets. So that's why I lean towards an over. For Milwaukee at the Bulls. So I was leaning towards the Bulls plus 4.5 and an over, but then I remembered the Bulls play awful against the top 3 seeds in both conferences, so I just flipped that, as even though Milwaukee, I know they'll figure out a way to choke this, I think the Bulls will just choke it harder. No pun. Well, that's kind of an innuendo, but I think the Bucks will just be a little more consistent than the Bulls, so that's why I'd lean towards Milwaukee minus 4.5. They should win this, even though in just both these teams just play so random that I prefer not to bet on them. But if I had to, I'd lean towards Milwaukee covering the spread minus 4.5, winning. And then with like the Bulls will just probably struggle on offense, as Milwaukee's wing defense with like Middleton and Holiday, that's pretty good. And then with Brook Lopez being back, their interior defense is better. And they still have Giannis. So that's why I lean towards an under, as Milwaukee's defense, even if you don't have all 4, it's still pretty good. Like, you just have to slow down Levine and DeRozan, and it'll probably go on under. For Washington at Minnesota, be going with Washington plus 11.5. I think this will be a high-scoring affair, as Minnesota will score a lot in Washington. Washington will score a lot in Minnesota. And even though I think Minnesota, like, they had the string of games where they were blowing out all their opponents, like probably like 3 weeks ago at this point, Minnesota's kind of flipped that, where their games are close or they're getting blown out. And Washington's had a few games where they've won by a lot, so that's why I'm leaning towards Washington plus 11.5, as Minnesota's kind of just been struggling the past week. So that's why I'm going with Washington plus 11.5. Then high-scoring game, over 233.5. For the Spurs at the Nuggets, the Spurs have been covering their spreads pretty consistently, so that's why I'll be going with the Spurs plus 7. Even though the Nuggets, they have a reason to be playing, like keeping their 6th seed spot, staying out of the play-ins. But the Spurs, I think, have a bigger reason, as they just need to keep their spot in the playoffs, so they at least have a shot at the playoffs. Like, both have pretty big reasons. So I'd probably just lean towards Denver winning, but I could also see the Spurs winning. But that's why I would take the Spurs plus 7. And if the Spurs do win, it's going to be a lot of scoring. Like, Spurs aren't going to win by their defense. They've been winning their games by their offense, especially as of late. So that's why I'd be taking an over 234.5. And same with Denver. Like Denver has also been putting up a lot of points in their like wins and their losses. So over 234.5. Spurs keeping it close. For Memphis at Utah, I'll be going with Memphis +5. I really have no faith in Utah really going to the playoffs, as there's just been that like same post being recycled on the Reddit where there's only been like 150 passes from Mitchell to Gobert all season, while there's like Trae Young to Clint Capella, there's been 151 assists. So just like the ball movement on Utah is, they're just not incorporating Gobert, a lot inside presence all on the wings. And Memphis, even though they've like clinched their spot, they're pretty much the 2 seed. They're still playing with a lot of heart, even with Morant being out. They're just really hard to beat right now. I'll put it as that. So seeing them as an underdog, I think it's good to take them like +5. I personally actually have a bet where I just have them beating the Jazz, because that's how much faith I have in Memphis compared to how little faith I have in the Jazz. I will be taking over 228.5. But overall, for the over-under for this game, I believe it wasn't out, but if I had to kind of guess where it's going to end up, be probably around 228.5. But I kind of see the spread for this game like between like 218 and like 236. I know that's pretty large, but I think the maximum amount of that would be like an over 220.5. As Memphis, they can score a lot. Even with players being out, and then the Jazz, they can keep up with scoring, but they also can struggle. But I think the over-under is just kind of up in the air, so I probably won't be betting the over-under at all for this game, as I can see multiple scenarios. But Memphis keeping it close and winning, I see that's very possible. For the Pelicans at the Kings, be going with the Pelicans -8. Pelicans have to keep their 9 seed, possibly, no, the Clippers are clinched in their 8th seed, so the Pelicans just have to keep their home court advantage for that first play-in game. And the Kings, they're just playing basketball at this point. They're out of the playoffs, so there's all for pride now. Well, Pelicans, kind of the same reason, but once again, like they actually have a reason to be playing. They have a reason to be playing well, as it's like warm-ups for that play-in game. So that's why I'll be taking the Pelicans -8. Also, the big 3 for New Orleans is bigger than what the Kings have going. I will be taking over 225.5, as the Pelicans should be able to score at will against the Kings. And the Kings, like they're still the Kings. They do score a lot. I think the Pelicans defense will be able to slow them down, but not too much to like stop an over 225.5 spread. For the Lakers at the Suns, so I kind of see this as a big meme game. I believe all the Sun stars are back for this game, and I think it's just to beat the Lakers, which I find hilarious. And the Lakers, I didn't check the injury report. Like, even if LeBron is back, it's not going to matter. Like, I think the Suns are going to try to win this in the first quarter. If you're able to find a bet for the Suns over 40 points in the first quarter, I'd probably take that. They're also playing at the Suns, so there's going to be a lot of energy at this game, that's for sure. I'd be leaning towards Phoenix -11.5. I think personally I might be taking Phoenix like -18, as I'm a huge Suns fan. At the end of the day, I'm still a huge Suns fan, so I'm always going to have bet on the Suns. I will be leaning towards over 223.5, as I think the Suns will backpack a lot of points. I'm sure they just want to like hand it to the Lakers, as Lakers have been talking a lot, and then just to keep them out of the playoffs in the 11th seed, that'd be hysterical. So I think the Lakers really have no shot in winning this. If they do, that just means the Suns just had like a meltdown. They just have no reason to play for it right now. Like the last 3 games, like they're guaranteed 1 seed throughout the playoffs, so they have no reason to even be playing right now. But overall, I think the Suns should dominate over 223.5. Thank you for watching. As always, bet responsibly. Have fun watching the games, and good luck on your bets. And once again, thank you for watching.